I have a star-studded panel, as always, to help me unpack the issues here for discussion. I have with me the Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, Solomon Jamiru. Good evening and welcome to AYV On Sunday, Solomon.
Thank you, Samuel. Thanks for having me.
All right, I have lawyer Lansana Dumbuya from the opposition All People's Congress Party. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Mr. White.
I have Femi Claudius-Cole, who is the 2018 presidential candidate for the Unity Party. She doubles as the acting chair of the Consortium of Progressive Political Parties. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Always a pleasure, Samuel.
All right. I also have with me Reverend Jibril Akabo, who is the Director of Communications at the National Commission for Democracy. Reverend, good evening.
Good evening and thanks for hosting me.
All right, to those of you watching, listening and following us, you can be part of the conversation, share your thoughts. Just ensure that your messages are tailored to the issues being discussed here. You can move over to our AYV News Facebook page, drop your thoughts, ask your questions. We would always find time to go through some of them in the conversation. I'm going to start off with Lansana for obvious reasons. Back in Parliament, we saw pandemonium, rancor. There was this deep-rooted feud as to whether or not we should go with proportional representation. But then it came back to us from that very well where the water meant to nurture our democracy's drawn. They sent the ball back to us with the thought that the president has the ultimate power to tell Sierra Leoneans what form of election system we should go with. The president has directed the Chief Electoral Commissioner, as contained in the 1991 Constitution, that we must go with the proportional representation system, precisely the district block system in the 2023 polls. Where does that put all the cry right now?
Mr. Wise, the implementation or the attempt to implement a PR system in Sierra Leone is outrightly wrong, an affront to the people of this country. And, you know, when you look at the history of the PR system when it was initiated in Parliament, it was outrightly rejected. And remember, if Parliament rejects a position put forward by the government, that position is the position of the electorate, and it is the position of the people of this country, because the members of Parliament are the elected representative of Parliament. So once they have rejected it, the people of this country have rejected the PR system. If you look at the travaux préparatoires, or what we will say the preparatory note or the discussion in Parliament, you would see that it was on the air. You know, it was not a secret affair. It was rejected by members of Parliament. If that is the position, and you know, members of Parliament are supposed to be there to implement laws, to make sure that they promulgate laws.
Right.
If they've rejected the position, the president has no right to change the position at the 11th hour.
Is that, for the purpose of clarity, is that what happened? Did the president change the game at the 11th hour?
That is exactly what has happened, because, you know, let me go straight to the point.
Go ahead.
This issue of Section 38A of the Constitution, that is the amendment of 2001. I have seen a lot of explanations, you know, people propounding their own ideas about it, giving interpretations here and there, but it is black and white. There is no other interpretation you can give to it. Primarily, you're looking at the primary legislation or the primary provision in the Constitution. What is the primary provision? The primary provision for election is Section 38, not 38A. 38 gives you the position of constituencies, forming constituencies, wards, and all the rest of it. So if you want to implement a provision, you look at the primary provision of that legislation. And that legislation states that, in fact, Sierra Leone is supposed to go into constituencies, elections. Now, Section 38A is the proviso. It's not the parent legislation, it's the proviso. That is where this cannot operate. If this is impossible, completely impossible, outrightly impossible, then you go to, you see, it's not a mistake that Section 38A was inserted. It's not a mistake. Although I have the idea that beginning from 1996, it was unlawfully, the PR system was unlawfully implemented. People don't even know that.
How so?
Because in 1996, the 1991 Constitution states, 38, there was no 38A. It states that the Sierra Leone is supposed to go into constituency elections and ward elections. And so if a PR system came into force, which was understandable at the point in time, although it was unlawful and illegal, I can say that, because we were coming from a very troublesome war, and people had moved from constituencies were no longer in place, well organized at the point in time. People ran away from their constituencies. So in 1996, we did the PR system. But then, between 1996 to 2001, getting to the 2002 elections, they realized that the PR system, which was implemented in 1996, was unlawful, illegal. So they had to remedy that situation. So in remedying that situation,
the amendment.
Yes, in remedying that situation, they had to promulgate the 2001 amendment.
I just want to permit me to just read a line from the press statement put out by your party. It says, "For the records, we are aware that His Excellency the President may constitutionally or statutorily direct that elections be held in accordance with the provisions of Section 38A.
I've just got close to that, So realizing that the 1996 PR system was illegal, so they needed to have, to have it amended. So that's why they amended it to the 2001 Amendment Act. So as to, because they were getting, remember, Mr. Wise, I like you to call you Mr. Wise because that's the name I like. Remember, they were getting close to 2002. Elections were supposed to be held in 2002, and they were going to also go into the PR system. So they realized that this was wrong, this was illegal. So they needed the 2001 Amendment Act to regularize the 2002 elections. So after 2002, between 2002 to 2007, constituencies were delimited massively and in a well-organized fashion. And therefore, it was not necessary for PR system in 2007. And in 2007, we had constituency elections. So now, let's come to now.
Yes.
The reason why we are having this discussion.
Yes.
Now, because of Section 38A, the Electoral Commission, they're saying that, in fact, they are implementing Section 38 as directed by the President. That is wrong. The reason why I say that is wrong, you cannot, you see, there are so many arguments to this, and sometimes it's complicated when you don't have time. If Parliament rejected something, firstly, the President cannot come and say, no, I will, like you say, I will do it. This is what I'll do. No, you cannot do that. Is that the case? That's the point. Is that the case? Is that what happened? Did Parliament reject the Parliament reject the proportional representation system? Yeah, I can tell you how.
Technically, Parliament realized that it's a constitutional provision already. So let's forget about the 2022 public elections bill that was before Parliament that later became a law. So whether or not they would have expunged it from that bill, does it not still stand because it's in the 1991 Constitution?
It still stands, but the idea is that there was the provision in 2001. So if the provision already existed, Parliament needed to remedy certain situations. And what are those? If you have Section 38A, there was no guiding policy how to go about it. The PR system was only just there as a PR system.
Right.
So if you have, that's why people are talking about the schedule. The schedule that is at the back is not really the law. It guides the parent legislation. How do you implement it? That this is the format that you go about, the calculations. So therefore, it is not per se that the President and the Electoral Commission should come now and implement it. The 38A is for situations where, in the future, if there is any circumstance where the constituency elections cannot be held, then if you want to implement the PR system, you have to go by Section 38A, and then all the other provisions will follow.
As you say that, perhaps we should have started on this note. Where conditions arise that would not permit the country to delimit boundaries or the existence of constituencies. Let's take quickly the excerpt from the Chief Electoral Commissioner, giving us reasons why he was directed. I mean, citing the August 10 riots or protests that disrupted, according to him, the boundary in fact, the electoral calendar, because they were in the process of delimiting boundaries. Let's join Mohammed Kone, the Chief Electoral Commissioner.
In accordance with Section 38A of the Constitution of Sierra Leone, 1991, Act number 6 of 1991, as amended in 2001, referencing subsection 3 of Section 38 of the Section 38, the President may, after consultation with the Electoral Commission, direct that such election shall be conducted on the basis of the existing districts in a manner to be known as district block representation instead of constituencies. On 19th October 2022, the Commission held a consultative meeting with His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio to update him on progress relating to the boundary delimitation exercise being undertaken by the Electoral Commission for Sierra Leone. Subsequently, on the 20th October 2022, the Commission received a correspondence from His Excellency the President, in which the ECSR was directed to use the district's block and proportional representation PR system for the conduct of the June 24th, 2023 multi-tier elections. Within this context, the Commission hereby informs the public and key stakeholders that the 2023 multi-tier elections will be conducted using the PR system, and that the boundary delimitation exercise, which had commenced, is halted with immediate effect. This is to facilitate effective planning on matters relating to procedures, rules, and regulations on the proportional representation system. The Commission remains committed and compliant with its legal mandates and guiding principles, and we keep the public and key stakeholders fully informed and engaged on this trend. Thank you. End of press statement. At the meeting with His Excellency the President, including others, and on the 19th of October 2022, you, that is the Commission, provided an update on the impracticality of delimiting constituencies in time for the 24 June 2023 general elections of ordinary members of Parliament. Advised that as a consequence of one above, the 24 June 2023 general elections was impracticable to hold using constituencies, and advised that on the basis of 1 and 2 above, the 24 June 2023 elections of ordinary members of Parliament be conducted on the basis of the secondary electoral system, namely the district block proportional representation system. As a consequence of the above, His Excellency the President, by the powers vested in him by Section 38A of the Constitution of Sierra Leone, Act 2001 has directed that the 24 June general elections of members of parliament be conducted using the district proportional representation. You are kindly advised to give effect to this presidential directive. Signed, Secretary to President. We are at this point in discussion as a commission to clearly identify which data. But if you refer to the provision under Section 38A, it says the district, the number of seats can be determined and approved by Parliament. So who determines that is something we are looking at it very keenly, and we are going to have consultative meetings with Parliament, with political parties. However, for the purposes of the boundary delimitation, which we started, and the reason we started was because the existing boundaries of constituencies expired on February 2022. And with the emergence, with the provision of the statistic data, we had already planned, we have already used that census data to determine the number of seats. So if we are going to carry out the boundary delimitation, surely we are going to use the midterm census. But as it is, since we are now using the district block system, which has different indication under the provision of Section 38A, then we need to have a discussion with political parties, the civil society organization, and other stakeholders to determine the number of allocated seats to districts. Because the last time the system was used, we had a fair spread of representation of constituencies across the country by district. So we are reviewing the process. We will come back to the public and inform them after having consultative meetings with all stakeholders, including political parties.
All right, that was Mohammed Kone, Chief Electoral Commissioner, Electoral Commission, Sierra Leone. Femi, let me hear you on, you've listened to what the Chief Electoral Commissioner had to say. For him, he's like a child being directed by the father.
Yes, and
he's just carrying out the mandate.
that is orders. And that, for me, is the biggest disappointment.
How so?
I cannot lie. We've had several engagements before with this chairman. And on a number of occasions, I did ask, I'm like, who are you serving? Are you serving the people of Sierra Leone, Sierra Leoneans? Are you watching out for them? Or are you serving the government in power? Now, if we go back, I am no lawyer, but let's go back to 38A, where he quoted in parts. There's a key line in 38. Now, the president has a lot of powers.
Right.
We accept, we agree. But he doesn't have absolute powers. There are conditions that must be met. And I am really sad when I listen to our Commissioner for Election Affairs that on his shoulders rests a huge responsibility to deliver free, fair, and credible elections.
Right.
And he's giving us this type of reason. Now, go back to 38A, where
He is just carrying out an instruction provided for by the 1991 Constitution. Would you hold him accountable for that?
I want to disagree with you there,
Go
because
ahead.
the Constitution is not toilet paper, and it is not a sanitary pad. It is the Bible of our country. And it says, where under any law for the time being enforced, a date for a general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established in accordance with the subsection. And he is on camera telling us an untruth, that there are no constituencies.
The constituencies expired in February of this year.
Sir,
and so they had set up a technical committee to do boundary delimitation.
They did not. As well as Chairman Kone can read all these constitutional provisions, so can we. And it says there, I read again for you, The Electoral Commission shall review the division of Sierra Leone into constituencies at intervals of not less than 5 and not more than 7 years, and may alter constituencies in accordance with the provision at that point. Now, he is telling us on national TV that constituencies have expired since February.
Boundaries were delimited. The last time boundaries were delimited
was in 2017, and it doesn't take effect until Parliament is dissolved. And Parliament was not dissolved until December. Now, if at all you're telling us that constituencies do not exist, pray, Mr. Commissioner, tell us what constituencies you just used for the voter registration. I believed we used constituencies and we used wards, and the parliamentarians are still actively in the well of Parliament doing their job. Parliament has not yet been dissolved. Mr. President, you have been misadvised. So in terms of the Constitution, the President has no standing on taking us to proportional representation because the conditions that should exist do not. And the Constitution, written by very smart men, gave a low threshold and a higher threshold, a 5-year window and a 7-year window. Now, and not only that, it says
2017 to now, does that not meet the
December doesn't, if we're going to be on technicality, the 5-year will expire in December, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman. But let me take you back to another sentence where you say it's like the son doing Papa's work. It says, in accordance with Section 3 of Section 38, for the purpose of such election, the President may alter after consultation with the Electoral Commissioner.
Right.
What does consultation mean? That you, Mr. Commissioner, they sit down with the President and you give good advice. He's coming to you for your counsel.
And it's up to the President to accept. Consultation does not mean you're going to impose to me.
But so not to Papa, they give picking order. It is the Commissioner with all his handicaps, with all that we have been through, with the time frame that is left, go advise Mr. President. Say, Mr. President, I know say you want this district block system, but one, we don't come off first pan census. I would say a botched one. We come off census, we go to voter registration. Again, I would say, as far as Western area is concerned, a suppressed one, where they were ill-equipped, ill-prepared. Everything that could go wrong for us, in especially some areas, went wrong.
With what the proponents have submitted or advanced.
But just give me 1 second, I beg.
Go ahead.
So after that, we now have the results of a census that appears as if they are not going to tally at all with the results of the voter registration that we just did. So when you go to the President for advice, that's what consultation is. It's talking and telling him. The President doesn't have to be a PhD in everything. He relies on people like you to give him good, solid advice that doesn't bastardize the Constitution. So you tell him, they've already blown the whistle for elections. Don't you see election campaigns and posters are everywhere? There are people already campaigning full blow. So you will then tell Mr. President, the timing is inadequate. And by changing the electoral voting system for all 8 million plus people, there has to be a period of sensitization.
All right. So one of the reasons why, according to the Chief Electoral Commissioner, one of the reasons is that at the moment, if we are going to delimit boundaries, we would miss or extend our electoral calendar because the calendar was disrupted by the August 10 crisis. So is that not one of the conditions that prompted or that should prompt the implementation of the district block system?
Samuel, that's a feeble excuse.
How so?
Completely feeble. That doesn't That's the inefficiencies of the voter registration. Do you know what was his excuse? August 10. The reason for boundaries, August 10. It seems as if August 10 just came as a blessing to some people. The chairman of ECSL has been telling us way back when at PPLC meetings, they are already on track to do boundaries.
Before the August 10.
Way before August 10.
Announcements were also made that a technical committee was being set to do boundaries delimitation, but the August 10 disrupted that, and so they don't have time.
No, not so true. They were already telling us way back then that they were on track. Remember, this is the ECSL, when the botched census results were still hot off the press, wrote a letter asking for those results. And they already started delimiting boundaries. They already started. So for you to now blame your inefficiencies, which are abound, on the August 10th is a very weak excuse. But that notwithstanding, when you know all that you have gone through, you had no electricity. Can you believe at the PPLC meeting where he announced this, Samuel, outside the conference room of the PPLC conference room were armed police, military police, armed to the teeth. And I was wondering, what is this? Is this a form of intimidation so us opposition cannot actually tell them some home truths? And Samuel, luckily, I was able to get a moment there to tell them, Mr. Commissioner, do you believe that you have given the president the best advice? That minutes to an election, where you know you're dealing with a population, una don't the alap and the people and say, you know, so if I don't get bad certificate, una don't get bad certificate. So you know our people have an illiteracy issue. You know our people. And then you are hoisting this on top of everything else on them. When you know, I said, well, your role, Mr. Chairman, is to advise the president. And as he gets advice from all these PhD people that surround him, somebody should have read to him 38A1 in its entirety.
All right. Continue to stay with me, Femi. Let me quickly bring in Reverend Jubilee Kago from. You know, you have or you run the permanent infrastructure that looks after our democracy. Where does the implementation, I know we've had, several conversations prior to the announcement of us going by the proportional representation system. Where does this put democracy at the moment?
Mr. Bangua, thank you so much. It's a fine question, though it might be regarded as a tall order. But we make our best to respond using also what we call our conscience. These are challenging times. And we want to ask the people of this country to do a little bit of reflection. When we had the situation of a one-party state, we cried, we groaned under the pain of that kind of arrangement, where it would appear as if the views of other people don't matter anymore. And when we look at what is obtaining now, can we, in all sincerity, say there is much difference between then and now? That is a question for people to answer. I sit here talking to you and I'm asking myself, is it that I did not read through my constitution very well to understand what is going on? And to now, because I wrote an opinion piece before this time.
Right.
I work for an institution that has the responsibility to raise awareness on the Constitution. and to educate and encourage the public to defend this constitution against all forms of abuse and violation. So, on the basis of that, I wrote an opinion piece to ask, are we actually going to host or conduct the 2023 elections using the PR system? Well, I said it's impossible. And in fact, if we attempt it, it's unconstitutional. That was what I wrote as an opinion piece to state my position on the matter. Of course.
And that's something you still go with?
Opinions. No, well. The situation has changed.
Okay.
The president has directed that we should use the PR system.
And is that in any way, does that in any way violate the Constitution?
The Constitution is clear as to when we should ask for that kind of arrangement. It's clear. And there is this argument about the expiration of constituency boundaries. Honestly, you don't have to be a lawyer to make a determination on that particular matter. Our parliament is still in existence. Parliamentarians are still doing their business and they're representing constituencies. Even
when a member of this very parliament told me in one of my shows, in fact, one of these particular shows, the AYV On Sunday, in a previous edition, told me that they don't have constituencies right now.
How can you say that? We call them members of parliament and they are representing 132 constituencies. You see, it's for the sake of argument. Yes, we would want to present some issues. And Samuel, let me say this. What I have watched over time, the way we do politics in our country, we are not working towards building consensus. It's either you are in support of me or you are against me. That has led to the deep division in our country. I want us to look at issues in our country from a national lens and put aside the partisan differences. That when something is white, you call it white. When it is black, you call it black, regardless of what name they are going to give to you. You know, I could recall, under the last regime, when I would come forward with these concerns and talk straight, what people were saying then, he's a servant of God. That is why he's so honest. But today, I am labeled as belonging to a party. So I would always ask them, when it was the last time, why didn't you say I was part of this party? But that is not even the border now. I always look at issues that I'm involved in and ask myself, how is posterity going to judge this generation? And that is something everybody must be concerned with, regardless of what your opinion is or what your position is concerning issues in the country. How is posterity going to judge this generation? Looking at the things that are happening. You know, when I wrote that piece that I said, the opinion piece about whether we're going to conduct elections using the PR, I concluded that piece by saying, at a time like this, the focus should not even be about which electoral method we're going to use, but it's about healing the wounds that are so evident across the country. Don't we see the writing on the wall? Have we not been feeling the effect of what you call early warning signs? Do we want to plunge this nation into further chaos?
As you talk about that, some of the reasons advanced by proponents of the proportional representation system, one of them has to do with, in fact, it builds a bridge that will connect all the sides. It breeds inclusion so that smaller parties would also be included into the governance structure. It's less expensive. The violence you are talking about is also kicked out with the implementation of a proportional representation system. So does this not work?
Mr. Bangura, the argument is a very fine one. But I've always maintained that the strongest argument I can advance, let's make this clear. It's not about supporting or opposing the PR system.
Right.
For me, the focus is about us following due processes and not rush certain things up.
What are the processes that have been violated, by the way?
Well, we have an existing constitution with a focus that makes a particular approach mandatory, which is the first past the post. When there was a need for a change, we went to Parliament and we effected amendment. We worked on that given the circumstance. When the situation stopped existing, we reverted to what is the primary focus of the Constitution. If we want a change, for goodness sake, let's follow due process and change it. It's not about the change. I'm going now to the issue of the arguments presented. For me, my strongest argument that I present about the PR system is the economic side. That is my strongest argument. The thing about inclusion, stopping violence. If the civic consciousness of the people is low, people are still going to fight, regardless of the fineness of system that you're going to have. So it's about all of us making a decision to say, this is the best that we want for Sierra Leone. When we stop looking at the issues from a partisan lens, we can make progress. But unfortunately, for most of the time, the argument is about, well, I'm on this side, so therefore I should be opposed. I'm on this side, therefore I should accept. Let us look at what is in the best interest of the country. And when it comes to following due process, the issue of legitimacy comes in. And when you build legitimacy, it's usually on the foundation of consensus. It's not when people fight over things and say, well, I think I have a better muscle than you have. No, it does not augur well for nation building and the long-term development of this country. Mr. Bangura, let us face the facts in this country. Now that SLPP is in power, APC will do everything to ensure they do not succeed. Yesterday, when APC was in power, SLPP did everything to ensure they did not succeed. And it's a vicious cycle that has not taken us anywhere for the last 61 years. See where we are. For goodness sake, why can't we come together as a people, as a nation, and say, my party color should not define me, but I should be defined by the green, white, and blue. Because under that umbrella, we can make progress together.
Can I quickly ask you this question just before I bring in the government deputy minister? You know, Lawyer Dumbuya mentioned that Parliament rejected the proposal of having a proportional representation system that was contained in the 2022 Week Elections Act. But if Parliament truly wanted to reject the proposal, would Parliament not have amended the said constitution to have averted all of these crises we were talking about? Did Parliament reject it in any way, or did Parliament just, Parliament then just told us, hey, I think we need this, let's just be smart about it. Let's give them.
You see, Mr. Bangura, part of the problem that we experience as a country, it is because of the attitude of our members of Parliament towards even the assignments given to them. You see, when the 2022 election laws were passed, it appears as if most members of Parliament were not even looking at the documents that they were debating. Because the strongest argument now for the PR system is the schedule that was added. That's
Right.
the strongest argument. Where were they? Didn't they understand the implication of that schedule? If, at times, I don't know if as a people, we don't treat with seriousness any job that relates to the country. Because if you're a member of parliament and you're representing your people very well, every line of a document that is brought before you, you should read it.
The problem now we are faced with, that Parliament housed the SLPP, the APC, the NGC, the C4C, members of Parliament, paramount chiefs. These are all people in that very house. And so if technically they've agreed to go with proportional representation, then so why is the APC crying, saying, oh, we strongly oppose? I saw the tweets by the opposition leader in Parliament, Honorable Chelno Rabanad Majuba, saying it's a clear violation. This should not be happening. But Parliament, no motion was pushed for the Constitution to be amended. Instead, they took, by what many political pundits have submitted, they took Sierra Leoneans for a ride. Let's focus on the 2022 elections law that is before us. Let's expunge that part. At least, so the other day I read Sylvia Blyden's submission saying, in fact, Parliament gave the legitimacy to the president. Why now crying?
Oh God. Our country is very interesting. But honestly, there are times when I weep for my country. Because we need to be more serious than this. For the last 61 years, other countries are making so much progress. And if you take your time to read the history of this country, for instance, at A level, I read, it's a book by J.H. Price, Comparative Government. He said, before independence, Sierra Leone was leading in almost everything. Well, let's put it in the context of the sub-region. But after independence, we are now trailing. What is really wrong with us? That we don't even know the importance of representation. And that is why I always make reference to, I think, is it section 75 or 74, where you have English as the most important qualification for a...
You should be able to read and write.
Yes. We should pay attention to the quality of representation in this country.
All right.
So that when you come to me and ask me to jump out into the streets to rally behind you, I should be in a position to ask if you're actually serious.
Okay. Stay with me, Reverend. Let me bring Solomon Jamiru, the country's Deputy Minister of Information and Communication. Solomon, you've had the submissions made here by the three panelists and, of course, the Chief Electoral Commissioner there. So why we must go with the proportional representation system. So there is this allegation now that the act in itself is unconstitutional. It grossly violates the Constitution. What does the government make of this?
Thank you again for the opportunity, Samuel. So when you sent the invite, my first instinct was rather wait and let NEC that will conduct its affairs and subject to the direction or control of no other person, professionally and technically speak to this, and then some of us would come and just... But then I bearing in mind the duty that I owe, I think it's important for me to also lend government's perspective to this, given the ramifications and giving governments good faith in midwifing what we have, and hopefully all of us as Sierra Leoneans should be able to midwife this and own this process so that the outcome becomes very favorable. So, Samuel, Sierra Leone has practiced first past the post for the better part of our electoral history. The same way it's practiced in the United Kingdom, or someone who may be voting in the 38th Congressional District of California, for example, it's first past the post. We've seen it, we've practiced it, but there's another system. and a suitable system as well. A system which, when it pleased South Africa to set up a task force, then South Africa was hard to resolve the question, should we make permanent the legislation on the PR system that South Africa is practicing, or should we go back to the first past the post? The majority of the task force members held the view that they should do some kind of a mixed system, like a blend of the Westminster and the list system. But Parliament, in its wisdom, adopted the minority view, because in the reasonable estimation of the South African Parliament, adopting and giving some level of permanence to the PR system was consistent with 4 key cardinal principles.
Which are?
Inclusivity, simplicity, fairness, and accountability. So, for me, given the conversation we are having, the key guiding questions would be: 1, the question of legality. 2, are there any socio-political circumstances that may have warranted this? 3rd, what would be the social, political, and possibly economic utility that we could lend to this? So let's go on the question of legality. Because I've listened to my colleagues on the panel.
Yes, please.
We all know that the Constitution of Sierra Leone is the ground norm, Samuel, and Section 38 of the Constitution talks about conducting general elections on the basis of constituencies, and then a constituency returns 1 member of Parliament each. That's established, that's given. But the same Constitution, the same Section 38 of the Constitution has been amended. We now have 38A in the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act of 2001. That provision is not redundant. It is the law. And the effect of this amendment is that once it is impracticable to do the first past the post, in the sense that dates for general elections has been fixed, but constituencies have not been established. In 2006, for the 2007 elections, we had constituency delimitation. In 2017, for the 2018 elections, we had constituency or boundary delimitation. So having any other election will be on the basis of the delimitation of boundaries. So first, it is erroneous to suggest that elections will be conducted on the existing boundaries. That's not what the law is in Sierra Leone.
So in essence, what are we saying? Constituencies are not existing.
Will be redundant if the first past the post will be the system we'll go by. And we have listened to the chairman, the Electoral Commissioner.
Right.
He has said that it is impracticable to conduct it, do the limitation of the boundaries. And for President Bio will not direct the chairman of NEC what to do. But if the circumstances present themselves, then President Julius Maada Bio has the constitutional prerogative by 38A. And what is that constitutional prerogative? And what is the circumstance that is warranting this?
Because I was just going to ask
Date
about the
fixed,
conditions.
date fixed, and constituencies not established for the purpose of conducting the 2023 June elections. So that is established.
So constituencies or boundaries should have been delimited before the date fixed. Then the conditions would not have warranted any desire to use a proportional representation system.
So given the frame of 38A,
yes,
if the date is fixed and constituencies have not been established for the purpose of conducting the elections, June 2023, then His Excellency the President, of course, is constitutionally mandated to have consultations with NEC and then make a pronouncement. So on the question of legality, and I have listened, the question of legality has not been controverted on the table as I see it. So the second issue is what would be the enabling circumstances to warrant this? And I think it's clear. I really don't have to give any other interpretation to what the chairman of NEC has said. So thirdly, Of course, there are social, there is the relevance of having a PR system. But I'm sure in the course of the discussions, we'll all talk about that. But I just thought it's very important in my precursory remark to establish that the question of legality is settled, that Section 38A is the law. It is not redundant. And it is pursuant to this law. There is no violation of the Constitution. No violation whatsoever.
So let's talk about the social conditions that perhaps may have warranted the president to have directed, in consultation with the chairman, the implementation of the proportional representation system of elections. What are some of these conditions that have presented themselves for the implementation of the PR system?
Well, I would not speak to the extent beyond the framework of the chairman's pronouncement.
Right.
And I think, one, it would be unhelpful to the debate, and two, it would constitute a misrepresentation of the facts presented by him. So I think, in the abundance of caution, I would confine myself to the facts and circumstances as presented by the chairman, that given the circumstances, the time limitation, we can't have boundary delimitation. And because of that, clearly, it is the president's recourse to invoke the provisions of 38A, given the circumstances at hand. I can't speak beyond that, and I can't conjecture something that is not within the scope or in contemplation of the chairman of NEC.
What does the PR system, what does it provide for Sierra Leone's electoral architecture or the governance structure itself for inclusion?
So, as I said, if you read the abundance of texts on the proportional representation system, whether it's on Italy or it's on South Africa, in fact, if you read on the German situation, it's also very interesting. Because for the German Bundestag, in fact, when you vote, you're given two ballots, So one is actually to elect your local MP, and the other ballot is for the states where parties provide lists, and you vote for that list. And if you read the argument for the election to the Bundestag, one key thing stands out, and that's the fundamental principle of inclusivity. That given their experience over the years, they have seen that several interests and voices are factored in their parliament. When it was time for South Africa as well, when they set up the task force, I think the gentleman was Frederick Slabart. He was the chairman of the task force in 2003. Then they also had discussions about, and then they came up with the principle of inclusivity. And in fact, when it got to Parliament, when Parliament was debating whether to make permanent PR system or do a mixed system or go to first past the post, the primordial attention was actually given to inclusivity. So if you look at other systems practicing PR, that's one thing that seems to stand out, that when you practice the list system, I will give you one scenario. If Party A and Party B are contesting, let's take America, for example. The Republican Party has like 51%. Democrats would have 49%. The 51% would be elected as the winner. The 49% will be represented by the 51%. So the 51% will actually be representing the 49% that did not vote for the 51%. In a list system, if that 49% was able to attain a certain proportion of votes, that could also have representation in Parliament. So the argument is that in a list system, in a proportional representation system, parties that may actually do well, but given the restrictive nature of the first past the post system, and they don't end up being represented in a list system, once you are able to attain a certain threshold, well, I don't know at this point whether NEC will be doing the threshold as in 2002 or another parameter. I'm sure that there could be some enabling regulations coming. So I see that inclusivity really, and also simplicity, as I said, the four cardinal principles that South African Parliament actually used to take a decision that as far as we are concerned as a country, we will go by the PR system. So as I said, the PR system really has its own advantages. However, in all candor, and sitting here, I also acknowledge that you actually don't have absolute systems. No electoral system is actually perfect. I mean, every given political electoral system, whether it's first past the post or PR system, they could have their pros, they could have their cons. I mean, that's given. You know, so that's my preliminary sense of.
As you talk about inclusivity and the advantages of the PR system, the argument again that many have advanced is that it thrives in an environment or in a country that practices parliamentary system. But in a society that does presidential, how would that build that bridge? How does it work when, at the end of the day, we've seen where it's the executive that has everything in Sierra Leone, be it then now that has been the practice. How would that work?
I think, Samuel, I think two things have to evolve.
Go ahead.
One, the wider society has to evolve. Two, the systems would have to evolve. At the end of the day, legitimacy rests with the people. It's a question of what the people decide. We've seen what is happening in Nigeria today. Peter Obi is coming up. People are donating offices. People are coming out. But then you have a school of thought that is saying, let Peter Obi do your own. As far as we know, Atiku's party, Tinubu's party are deeply entrenched. So I think the decision is left with the people. And at the end of the day, whether it's the first past the post or the list system, at the end of the day, it is the people who have to come out and have the requisite stature and say, when we go out to cast our ballot, we do so in the best interest of our nation. So for me, given any political system, at the end of the day, the litmus test is how the people would really connect to the political process and what outcome do we really desire for our nation.
Let me quickly, before I bring in Lawyer Dumbuya, Reverend, the issue of democracy, what we've been told or what we've been taught is that in a democratic state, power belongs to the people. Now that we've decided that we're going with the proportional representation system, it means taking all that power from the people, giving it to the political parties. Now, in terms of political accountability, already with even the first past the post, we're seeing that political parties have so much grip over their people. If you do not support me, we would have to trigger 77K or so, or in fact, at the same time, it has to do with the chairman or the chairwomen of these political parties to award symbols. But now that it is becoming outright that, hey, wait a minute, the power or the buck stops with the party. You, the people, just go and vote. If you don't want, how does this work for a democratic state like Sierra Leone?
Well, in fact, my fear is what I call political apathy. That might even set in. What we need to do, I think we are almost building consensus around that. We need to educate the masses the more to understand what is going on. As we continue to emphasize on human capital development, when we get to that threshold, it becomes very easy to handle. But for now, it's a serious challenge. And that should be understood, that no matter what we do now, of course, with the existing one where you have to campaign, get to the people, it's still a challenge. Not to talk about where it's a list that comes from a party secretariat. We continue to ask that whatever we do, at the end of the day, let's ensure that we create the atmosphere where the members of parliament can still be answerable to the people. But there's this thing I just want to quickly clarify.
Which is?
The provision of Section 38, subsection 5. This thing about the expiration of constituency boundaries and things like that, let's even assume at the end of the day we even did the limitations. Existing boundaries, they only expire after the dissolution of that parliament. Look at subsection 5 of 38. It says, where the boundaries of any constituency are altered in accordance with the provision of this section, that alteration shall not come into effect, shall come into effect upon the next dissolution of parliament after the alteration has been approved by parliament. So,
and we have until December.
Yes. So you see, for the sake of argument, for me,
would there have been time? I mean, the electoral activities lined up.
Look, that is a given now. I'm only talking about the aspect of the expiration of the boundaries,
right?
Because the Constitution is not even silent on that. It tells us when a boundary becomes obsolete or not in existence anymore. So, well, I know the argument will continue. For me, the mistake of those who were kicking against it is that they did not watch the schedule closely. If they had also asked, if you are saying we are not going to promulgate PR system, why put a schedule that explains how we're going to share the votes? So that is where they made their
so that is why they gave the legitimacy to the implementation.
In a way, the lawyers are there. They will tell you about different types of interpretation. Probably mischief can even come in here. So, but it's there. It's almost like an ambush.
And so it will go back to the well where
they are responsible for this.
I mean,
and in fact, now you have some people who are even accusing them of complicity. Not that they did not see it, but they turned a blind eye to it. So anyway,
let me ask Lawyer Doumbia this question. As Reverend talks about how people did not pay attention to the schedule, I mean, if we go back to Parliament, for example, I always say this, that well is where we mine the iron to forge our laws. So whatever comes out of that very well is deliberate. And let's talk about representation. I've had many SLPP politicians, members of parliament, I've had civil society organization executives submitted that in the 2018 elections, your party, for example, the APC, secured 1% above VSLPP. But that 1% gave you 20 seats in parliament. So they are wondering, how did that happen? Just a single percent gave you 20 seats. So does that not question the boundaries, the amount of people each constituency has? So, okay, let's correct that. That is what I've had the SLPP pushing forward, saying we have to correct those political wrongs. You cannot come to parliament with 5 or 2,000, whilst Reverend enters parliament with about 27 or 35,000 people in his constituency. That inequality alone in representation, does that not put the proportional representation system in a fine footing?
Samuel, I think that particular argument is unsound for many reasons.
Go ahead.
But I'll just give you a few. Firstly, the PR system is not right for Sierra Leone.
Why?
In countries where the PR system is practiced, those countries are highly educated. The population of those countries are highly educated to an extent that they are able to understand all the issues surrounding the PR system. The PR system is very, very complicated, by the way. People think that when you say the PR system is just by district, you go vote and all the rest of it. It's very, very complicated. Not only that, it's very, very expensive. And it does not cater...
The PR system is expensive.
Very, very expensive.
Okay.
And it does not cater for local societies. The wards. It does not cater for the wards, the local society, development, and it does not even take them into consideration. And also, the PR system makes politicians very lazy. And that is how I want to come to your point, that for the 1%, so therefore the APC has 20 more seats than the other political parties. When you look at the PR system, for example, I don't want to go into the other systems, but let me just talk about the list system, because that is what exactly I know my colleague here has spoken about, and I believe that's the system that, the attempt they want to use. It's a list system, and that list system, the party dictates the names of the people to be on the top of the list.
Right.
You may have politicians who are really the politicians that the people want to represent them in parliament. They are the politicians that they know, the grassroots politicians in their communities. Their names may be in the bottom. Reasons being that they don't have the financial power to give the political party the money so much so that they will be put on the top of the list. So if you give more money, then your name will be on the top of the list. So as a result, politicians will not go to the people to seek the support of the people. All they will look at is that my name will be on the top of the list, so I give my party, if I give my party a huge amount of money, then my name goes on top. So therefore...
So you buy space in essence, that's what you're saying.
In the PR system, you buy space. And that is all the more reason why in countries like South Africa, is talking about the Bundestag and all the rest of it, these are societies that the people are very highly educated to an extent that they are able to appreciate the system. And by the way,
so you're saying education is an impediment to the implementation of a proportional representation?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Was it successful during the 2 periods we implemented it?
No.
What's your take?
Let me say it was like a way of compromise among the political parties, that constituencies were no longer in existence, and it was very difficult for people to do the delimitation of constituencies, and many other things were in place, so much so that it was virtually impossible. And like I said initially in my introduction, that between 1996 to 2002, there were no constituencies. So there was all the more reason for them to implement the 2001 legislation. And by the way, we are not disputing, like my colleague said, the law is there. We are not disputing that Section 38A is absent. It is there. It is the law. But what we are saying, it is like a proviso.
So for it to be implemented, there are things that must warrant.
Yes.
So you have Section 30, Section 38. You look at Section 38. Are we going to be able to implement Section 30? My colleague and my friend here, Solomon Jamiu, said that there were no there is no constituency existing. There are no constituencies existing at the moment, and they've expired. I mean, that's my interpretation of what he said. They've expired, and
he said they would.
Yeah, no. According to him,
Go ahead,
according to him, he said they've expired. Yeah. Now, to me,
I did not hear that. I did not. Yes, please.
He said with regards
conducting the June 2023 elections.
Yes.
Constituencies have not been established.
Yes. So,
go ahead.
To me, that is outrightly
wrong.
Not true. It is wrong. So, with the greatest respect to my colleague here, I have tremendous respect for him. It is wrong. If you recall, when my sister here was speaking, she gave specifically the period within which the 5-year period will expire. But again, as Sierra Leoneans, let us be very serious about what we are doing in this country. The 5 years is the minimum.
Exactly.
7 years is the maximum. For goodness sake, why do we want to look at the minimum, even when we have not attained the minimum, 5 years? We are still being disingenuous and willfully misinterpreting the Constitution. It's a disgrace for some of us as lawyers and also lay people. Well, I don't have much of a problem with the lay people. They can read into legislations, but as lawyers, we are trained people, and we are, although that does not necessarily mean that we are right in our interpretation, whatever we give. But again, we have to make sure that you interpret the Constitution the right way. So 5 years is the minimum, and it's not yet.
And what's the right way of interpreting the Constitution?
The right way of interpreting the Constitution.
That your view is right and the other view is wrong.
No, just read it.
Now, the right way of interpreting the Constitution, it says in section 38 where there are no
constituencies.
That is the underlying word. And I want my colleague to look at that very clearly.
You submitted earlier when you were giving the the disadvantages of a proportional representation system that it allows for electoral fraud, where people just come with heavy pockets or purses. They just buy spaces from the political parties. Does it also create an environment where those who do not wish to go through the fight, through the Mamik course, but they are very decent Sierra Leoneans who would want to go to Parliament and represent and give quality representation, does it not also provide an opportunity for them to walk up to their political parties, and their political parties seeing them as people that can actually give quality representation and say, hey, I'll not be the camp and this thing, because everybody when we want this to be the cost fet and some of we not able. So now we want for carry represent party. Do you also look at that?
Now, when it comes to the representation of the people, it is not how highly educated the person is or how genuine. It is the people. The people want specific representation in Parliament.
Whether qualified to represent them or not?
Whether qualified or not.
Is that not why we are crying about quality representation?
No.
Go ahead.
For me, whether qualified or not, it is the people's choice. And for the people, they are not looking at qualification. It is the quality of that person to be able to represent them. How well is that person going to represent them? You being highly qualified may not be the person who will represent their interests. That person may not be au fait with their problems.
Exactly.
They know those who are au fait with their problems. So those are the people they want in Parliament. And therefore, again, when you look at the PR system, it is a system that does not breed development in the country.
How so?
When political parties go out and give their manifestos, they give out what they're going to do for the country, for the people.
Right.
And now, if you have a system where you have party A pulling the highest vote, and you have party, a PR system is a system that can even resort to a position where you have party A pulling the highest vote, say about 49%, and then you have smaller parties just pulling smaller votes. But all those smaller votes, when you put them together, they have 51%. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, in that case, that if those parties can come together, they can take over, and then the party that has done so well, 49%, will be put in the back foot.
So does that not encourage inclusion in the sense that, I mean, all of these political parties would then coalesce. There will be that coalition for them to come and have a national flavor?
Coalition in any system, as in Italy, is dangerous because political parties, they have their own ideas of how they want development to go. When they sit on the table, and they are looking at their development programs, and party A, who has the highest vote, is trying to say, okay, let us build a stadium, or stadium is the most important thing, or we want to build the roads. The roads, roads are the most important for now in the country because we cannot move around. And party B say, no, we want some swimming pools. That is what we want, swimming pools at the table. And party C is saying, no, we don't want swimming pools. We want cars. That's what we want. At the end of the day, the decision will not be taken because they have formed coalition, and the coalition have not been able to come at a consensus as to what to do. As a result, what happened? The coalition will be destroyed, and then they will go back to elections. So that is why you see for Italy, for over 20 years, you have several prime ministers coming, or president coming, and it's a very, very complicated system, and it's not a system that is good for development. First past the post is very good for development because once a party has a good agenda and the populace say, let us put this party in, then they will come and implement their manifesto.
Femi, let's talk about representation. We know fundamentally, going back by our 1991 constitutions, there are 3 fundamental mandates of, our members of parliament. They make laws, they represent us, they perform oversight functions. For the periods we've practiced the first past the post, we've always referred to our parliament, for example, as rubber stamp. They've always been influenced, they've always been controlled. That has always been the myth by the executive. And when Lawyer Dumbuya was talking about quality representation, the first past the post, Samuel Nawan Junk Seller, but very popular in Nigeria. Senator Samuel, fortunate for read small and right. Samuel actually, but just because people no say this, I know say, but popular, let me say go contest. And I won. Went to parliament. What am I going to do in parliament? In terms of representation, in terms of making laws, in terms of performing oversight functions. Does that mean I go to parliament with the required skills to give quality representation, unlike for what many people have advanced for the PI system? Femi is a professional. Femi can actually, make a good debate if we have to talk about health, for example, if we have to talk about water, electricity, but Femi cannot. Femi would not want to go into fight with Samuel when I remember. But this, the PR system is now saying, okay, Femi, you have the opportunity now to approach your political party to, hey, don't they pull out parties because of how they behave, the cost, the this, the that. But now I think the system is okay. Does that not guarantee Femi a space?
Okay, in the first instance, the first thing I said earlier was that the Constitution is our Bible.
Right.
And what the Constitution says is that you should be able to speak and be understood in English.
Right.
And that requirement, Samuel, goes for the president too, because the president need only qualify to be a parliamentarian. So, until and unless we put in qualification minimums for our parliamentarians, the Constitution remains our Bible.
Right.
Now, what are first of all, I just wanted to just say what Mr. Jamiu was saying, constitutions are not invalid. The constituents are not yet invalid. They have a window.
Respond to that submission after I read this text from a member of parliament, by the way. He's saying, Samuel, the constituencies have expired when parliament allows the boundary delimitation statutory instrument matured into law, having met the provision of subsection 7 of section 170. By that instrument, it nullifies the constituency, and subsection 5 of section 38 is only awaiting the dissolution of parliament. Secondly, the 7 years expiration, if you go by it, it will mean after 2023 elections, by 2025, new boundaries should be delimited, when the 6th parliament would have 3 years in their term. So let it be known that all parties allowed the boundary delimitation instrument turned into law, and it nullifies the existing boundaries and fulfill subsection 4 of section 38.
And we thank him for that, but let's take him again to 38.5 that Reverend read, where the boundaries of any constituency are altered in accordance with the provisions of this section, that alteration shall come into effect upon the next dissolution of Parliament, after the alteration has been approved. Have the boundaries? Well, that's why we will probably need qualifications to get into Parliament. Maybe we need to have a master's minimum. Or maybe, well, PhDs are 2 for penny now. We would have said a PhD. But that's exactly it. He's texting to argue, and there it says it in black and white. After the alteration has been approved by Parliament. Please text him again and ask him, has Parliament approved of the alteration? It's ridiculous. But let's take it away from that for a minute, Samuel.
Go ahead.
I enjoy Mr. Jamiru, where he's giving us examples of Germany, of Nigeria, of South Africa. Well, look, PR, there are very good elements of PR. When a PR system is properly, carefully, and patiently implemented to suit our own culture. Our MPs in Sierra Leone, yes, the books say they make laws and they have oversight. But their responsibilities in their community far exceed that, and that is their cultural role. It may not be on black and white, but the MPs have a lot more hands-on responsibility within their communities. And as they are touting how beautiful PR was when they used it then, there were disadvantages, Samuel. One, as Lawyer Doumbia already stated, those with a powerful purse, they want their way get money, make their way to the top of the list. And what ends up happening is, the one that's number one on the list may or may not be, say for example, the constituency of constituency 110. I submit my list, and I'm from York, I put myself on the top of the list. And Reverend is from York, from a different party, I'm from party A, Reverend is from party B, instead of York he come out, coincidentally, he's on the top of his list. And Lawyer Doumbia is also from York, and I in the back at the top of the list for him for party C. And we contest. Reverend meets the threshold, myself meets the threshold, and lawyer meets the threshold. So that constituency's 3 parliamentarians, guess what, are all from York. What happens from the people from Adonkia? What happens to the representation for the people from Godrich? This is the system that we're looking at. And that has happened before with Potloko, where 3 or 4 MPs were all from Potloko Central. And secondly, the people of that area have no idea who you are. There's been no relationship built. I'm looking at PR within our African and our Sierra Leonean context.
Whose responsibility it is, in the sense that, I mean, if I come with a very heavy pocket to a political party, does that really speak to how corrupt our political parties are? Because, I mean, if we're these are the institutions that form government. So if Party Blue, for example, I mean, Reverend is rich, Reverend buys us, it tells that they can sell the state. So it goes back to you, the political parties. How corrupt the political parties are to allow, and in fact, even express those fears.
Exactly. So why would you, with all the experience we're getting with corruption here in Sierra Leone today, why would anybody that is thinking Sierra Leone look at this system of submitting a list and say this is the best system? They're talking about it will deter violence. No, it won't. There's violence already, and we're not even in election period. How will it deter violence? It will not. It is still going to be an aggressive competition between political parties for whatever percentage, whatever threshold it is. So, the legality of it has not been clarified. It has not been clarified. And if Chairman Kone says so, does not make it a fact. And Chairman Kone got it horribly wrong. And he has gotten it wrong on several occasions. This is not his first time. And Chairman Kone's responsibility is one to build up trust. And I listened to him, and he mentioned political parties being consulted, I think 4 times. And they do not have the culture of collaboration, of consultation, of engagement. All it is information. And if we have this little time to June 24, and if the chairman was wise, he would advise the president that in light of the time that is left and in the light of a system that is prone, that when it comes to political parties giving money, it's heavy donors. It's not called corruption. It's heavy donation, okay? And the likelihood of heavy donation.
That could be a way of dressing it.
That's
because if I could buy a space,
it boils down to that.
To electoral fraud, to corruption.
Yes, and you can have somebody flying in from the UK, comes in with dollars and pounds, and next thing you know, they're on the top of the list.
And then we still go back to the political parties. Why would you allow someone why would you give that to someone when you know you're going to form the next government?
But
in essence, you've started nursing corruption
leave it open?
at the party level.
Samuel, then why, in God's conscience, why would you leave it open?
Right.
Why would you leave that as a possibility?
Okay.
When Sierra Leoneans are also crumbling under the weight.
We have to bring in our lovely audience who've been following the show. Interesting, we have close to, 1,000 active viewers at the moment. But let me bring in Solomon. Looking at the first past the post, the advantages, we've practiced it for the longest of times. We've seen what that system has put us through, even in terms of representation in Parliament. And we're now looking at, 2023, our 6th Parliament. We have to be members elected from the proportional representation system. So where do we stand with a PR system as against the first past the post in terms of what does it offer to Sierra Leoneans and the electoral architecture, in fact, governance performance in general?
So first, I think it has to be underscored that no electoral system is actually foolproof. Every given electoral system has its merits and it may also have demerits. So whether it's first past the post or the list system or PR system, every electoral system has its merits and demerits.
Right.
And I think there is this United Nations policy directive when it comes to assisting countries in doing electoral reforms. These are some of the arguments they have also canvassed. So first, it's a matter of domestic jurisdiction, but you also have to bear in mind that every electoral system really has its pros and it has its cons. So for somebody who would want to be saying that we must use the first past the post system and present it to be the perfect system or the most ideal system, that is not the case. Because even given the first past the post, in terms of representing the people, even given the close proximity that our members of parliament have with their people. Samuel, you cover stories in all constituencies. IGR was doing a poll and was suggesting that a good number of parliamentarians now may not return to this parliament.
Right.
So this is even given the strongest of proximity that parliamentarians have with their people. Look at what is happening. So there are dysfunctions, even with the first past the post system. Parties could also get chaotic. Whether it's SLPP has seen its own fair share of troubles in party. APC has seen its own fair share of troubles in the party. So these things happen irrespective of any electoral system that you have. But I just want to react to a few issues. First on my learned seniors take on the PR system may not be ripe for Sierra Leone because of the level of education. So we would want to ask, between 1996 and 2002 to now, have our people become less educated so that the system does not become suitable? No. It's a question of electoral and voter education. If the decision is that it's the PR system, then of course it triggers a wider, comprehensive voter education for the people to know that this is the system, and you explain to them. So even when we have first past the post, we do voter education. In 2002, I was involved in voter education, and I did it massively around the country. So present it to the people and communicate, and the people know exactly what to do.
Do we have the time right now to do so, the luxury?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
As long as it's full-blown and you use the machinery for that, whether it's civil society, traditional structures, church and mosque, and you use there are established structures to do so.
Go ahead.
On the issue that if it is PR, then people will have to be going to political party top guns so that their names would be on the list.
Right.
Even when it's first past the post, You dey go to your people, them baptize you. But you get for come back to the political high priest for confirm you, Samuel. You know? Yes, and interestingly, this system does not preclude independence. There are some. No. I will tell you. Let me tell you. Let me tell you.
Well, interestingly, I've spoken to the Chief Electoral Commissioner about the inclusion of independent candidates, and he is saying they are going to be there.
No. So Samuel, let me say this.
It has to go back to Parliament.
Go ahead.
It has to
Samuel,
go back to Parliament.
let me say this. By Section 35 of the Constitution, it says, subject to the provisions of this section, political parties may be established to participate in shaping the political will of the people. Political parties may be established by Section 35 of the Constitution. But the fundamental regime for qualification to contest for general election is the provisions under Section 75 of the Constitution. And you have 4 key criteria. You have to be a citizen of Sierra Leone, otherwise than by naturalization. You must be 21 years or over. You must be an elector. In other words, your name must be on the voters register. And you must be able to read and communicate in English. Those are the 4 criteria for qualification. So whether on the basis of the Constitution of Sierra Leone Act number 6 of 1991 or by the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act of 2001, no independent candidate is precluded from participating. And I will not be surprised in the coming days, given any enabling regulations coming out, whether from NEC or something, I'm sure they would speak to these at great length. Even for the first past the post system, you really don't have an express thing on independent candidates. Independent candidates have been contesting. So whether on the basis of this constitution or on the basis of the constitutional amendment, no independent candidate is actually discriminated against in terms of contesting.
They actually are.
All right. I'll quickly, because I need to bring in our audience, quickly.
Samuel, let me just give you a scenario. Each political party submits a list.
Yeah.
And the list has if it's a 10-seat constituency, 10 names, and some backups. What does the independent candidate present? Let us say an independent candidate presents a list of himself alone in one green, and he submits the list to NEC, and he goes and he wins, let us say, for argument's sake, 90% of the seats. So does he alone represent, does he have 3 or 6 seats by himself? There is no provision for an independent candidate. And if the chairman told you there is, he told you yet another untruth.
All right, well, we'll look.
So let's wait and see.
Yes.
It will need to go back to Parliament.
Details. Let me run through a few messages quickly. Unfortunately, guys, there are so many, and time would never permit me to go through all of them. In fact, I will not even go through 0.01% of your messages tonight. But Sarah Kule Conte is saying, Mr. Dumbuya, if you're saying our parliament rejected the PR system, please be specific. If it's the one under the leadership of Mr. Bundu, because I can still remember when he said PR system is not in front of Parliament to debate. So please tell us how it was rejected. Please note that down. Okay. Amara Alpha is saying the basic principles underlying proportional representation elections are that all voters deserve representation, and that all political groups in society deserve to be represented in our legislature in proportion to their strength in the electorate. In other words, everyone should have the right to fair representation. In order to achieve this fair representation, all PR systems have certain basic characteristics that set them apart from our current electoral system. First, they all use multi-member districts. Instead of electing one person in each district, several people are elected. These multi-member districts may be relatively small with only 3 or 4 members, or they may be larger with 10 or more members. And it is true that since independence, Sierra Leone, only the APC and SLPP as parties have been making decisions in the well for Sierra Leoneans, but now we need all political parties, inclusive of the smaller parties, in decision-making for our beloved country. Bravo to ECSL for a job well done. So many. So I will not. In fact, some of you guys are making the job easier for me. When you go personal, I will not. And if I continue to struggle, I will just stop reading the messages. Absila is saying this is not even my problem. The problem is that the distance between Egypt and Israel is about 613 kilometers. But it took Moses and the Israelites 40 years to complete their journey. On the average, each day, okay, I don't know what you're saying there. I thought there's coalition. If the president follows the PR system, it means us, the citizens of this country, have no right to members of parliament. It's not a good system. Let the president have a rethink, Mohammed John Mansare is saying. Alhaji Ibrahim Suri Kamara, that word is too strong, I'm afraid. Abubakar Rashid is saying there is no provision for local governments and councils under the proportional representation system. Local councils are divided into wards and boundaries. This is completely defiance from the PR system. So it seems as if the Electoral Commission have not done a job well done. Okay, Brahma Yaya Kalawa is saying everything in Sierra Leone is about the president. Why do we have the three arms of government? Where is the supremacy of the rule of law? Correct me if I'm wrong. Todd Kam is saying laws kicked out of parliament cannot be used in any form. Parliament enacted the approval of all legislation. Any form of law imposed is a treason offense. Right? I'm going to take at most 5 more messages, guys. Kaifala Kusia is saying, has the president gone in any way wrong when he did go by the constitution? A question there. Unbelievable, this country. Okay, that's not. Marcos Gogra is saying the PR system discussion is a constitutional legal matter and not an emotional or personal issue. So why? Okay, I will ask my producer that question. Or maybe you want to apply for that job.
Good job.
The PR system was founded in the 1991 Constitution. Why should this system be implemented now? The citizens of this country should be educated by the parliamentarians on this PR system, especially the layman in a village. Mama, you are not a lawyer, so you can't go deeper into the nitty-gritty aspect of it. Wait on Mr. Solomon Jamiru to come and start using some Latin law grammar. Eddie Grant is saying that this is a very serious issue. Also, Sierra Leoneans are playing around with it, allowing bad politicians to treat us citizens as fools. Please, guys, when talking about Section 38, make sure you read and explain to us the amendment of that Section 38 of the Constitution. Bokra Ijina is saying. The question here is why was the midterm census conducted only to be abandoned without the much talked about boundaries delimitation? It's a waste of money and time. The government knew they didn't have the numbers expected to do the boundary delimitation. Hence, they are trying to impose the PR system, even though there's an established constituency. Hassan Mansour Kabu is saying that there is so many messages for complimentary messages for you, Reverend. But I'll leave it as complimentary messages. I will not go through all of them. Samuel, the said honorable, is not well informed to say that we no longer have constituencies. Our parliamentarians were voted for 5 years, and you start counting on its first parliamentary state opening. Silvanos Kroma is saying. George Orwell is saying, Reverend Kagbo, you are so true, but this president and his administration are so too strong of a word for me to go through. Samuel, why didn't you call someone from the government? Okay. Maybe I have to reintroduce Solomon. All right.
I'm also working for government.
Exactly. So Abdullah Saidu is saying APC thinks that they are so smart. They want to overrule the parliament should, in case we use the constituencies election, so that they would have more parliamentary seats. But trust the system. That's not going to work. We are going to use the PR system whether they like it or not. 70% of our parliamentarians not even know it's in our PR system. So how can they argue on it? Grace Sori is saying that. Guys, unfortunately, I would have to apologize. So many messages, hundreds of them. I cannot continue reading them. The final message I would want to take is more proportional share of the votes in the north for SLPP as compared to APC in the south. John Mame saying that. So as we try to round off the conversation, Reverend, what should be the best way? Now it is clear, the president has spoken in accordance with the Constitution.
In defiance of the Constitution.
The Electoral Commission is saying we have to go into implementation. I mean, the Commander-in-Chief has commanded us. What's the pathway right now for a free, fair, and credible elections?
Okay, the Constitution is, of course, not bereft of what actions that should be taken when we think there are issues challenging its very existence. I want to say, using this platform, that we cannot seek redress using violence. Let us take recourse to the avenue available to all of us. The courts are there to give us clear-cut interpretations of what is meant. I honestly look forward to a day in our country where we have a compendium of interpretation of these issues, so that we don't have to bother ourselves. But somebody will tell you, the lawyers are here, they will tell you it's a way of taking the job from their hands, because it's mostly litigant-driven. Somebody should go, and then they will call somebody to adjudicate on behalf of this party or that party. So if we ask for a compendium of interpretation, that might just take some job from them, and they will say, well, since you're a reverend, you still preach and get your money, or do something else. But you want to deprive us. But on a more serious note, let's look for ways and means how to ensure we get these interpretations clearly.
Okay.
But of course, as it stands now, we can always approach the courts. And I also want to make an appeal, even as we address this important subject. Because what came out is that, especially with the PR, the fear is that somebody might use money to buy his way into whatever position.
Yes.
Let us make conscious efforts to not just talk about it, but to come up with legislation wherein we put a cap on electoral financing. Because as it is, as far as I know, it's open. Anybody can come, any amount, that person becomes the big man of the day. And even if that person is not liked by the people or wanted by the people to represent them, that person is eventually going to go there, and we of course, we continue to see the mismatch between those who are representing us and those that they are representing. So we continue to make the appeal, and we want to remind every Sierra Leonean we are operating a democracy. And the centrality of the people should imply that we've looked for ways and means to engage.
All right.
Not to make decisions that will create unnecessary tension.
Okay.
Let's engage. Let's dialogue.
Femi?
It will help us.
Femi? Yes.
I am not very hopeful of there being what Reverend is just hoping for, which would be engagement. I mean, real engagement. I don't see that happening. I haven't seen much of that with this particular chairman of ECSL. I think the chairman, as you had said earlier, is simply doing what dad says. My papa say, "La do this, I do."
Because the law says that most.
The law doesn't even give dad all that authority, but it has been endorsed by his son. And I think that it's a very sad day for the people of Sierra Leone, where their interests are not being placed above all else.
Okay.
And I hope that the sensitization, I hope that the courts actually are going to do the right thing for once.
Going to courts?
I think this matter should definitely get to court.
So should we look forward to Femi taking this matter to the Supreme Court?
You can look forward to Femi taking it to the Supreme Court.
All right.
Pray for me, like money.
Yes, Samuel, first you have to bear with me. There was a question posed when you were reading the text, so I have to...
Quickly, you can go ahead, quickly.
Yeah, now, when I said Parliament rejected
Yes.
the PR system, I was not saying that there is no provision for that, because Section 38A already caters for that. What I was saying was that Parliament rejected it in the body of the legislation. It was outrightly rejected in the body of the legislation.
Okay.
So the schedule only makes provision for Section 38A, where the circumstances comes into play. Maybe we are at war at one point in time, or something happens so much so that the delimitation of constituencies are no longer in existence because of the situation will arise. There will come a time. So that law will come into effect.
Okay.
And also, please bear with me, Auntie Femi, for my colleague here, Solomon Jamiru, who says that, also the Electoral Commissioner, who says that independent candidates are catered for. Please read Section 38A for me. I mean, for all viewers, sometimes you have to be clear about this. Read Section 38A clearly for them to hear.
Where under any law for the time being in force, a date for a general election of members of Parliament has been appointed by constituencies, but constituencies have not been established in accordance with subsection 3 of section 38 for the purpose of such election, the President may, after consultation with the Electoral Commission, direct that such election shall be conducted on the basis of the existing districts in a manner to be known as the district block representation system instead of constituencies.
And the next one also, I don't want you to read that. It specifically states that that district block is based on political parties.
Okay.
Political. Samuel,
There's no way
based
for
on political parties. So an independent candidate does not have a political party. So therefore, he or she will not fit into that particular arrangement.
At all.
That is clear. And also, I want our viewers and the President and also the Electoral Commissioner, I want to put them on notice and also for the information of the international community that the All People's Congress political party outrightly reject this position, which was just tabled on the eve of election. It is completely wrong and it breeds discontent, and it is an affront to the people of this country. This is just the eve to elections. You cannot just come and impose a system that is not known by the people of this country.
Okay.
Even the one that we know, the first part of the poll, is very, very difficult for us to follow. The people are not, look at the amount of
Void votes.
Void votes we have.
All right.
Not to talk about the PR system.
Thank you.
It is a complete
Solomon?
It's a system
What's your parting shot, Solomon?
not good for the country.
All right, thank you very much, Samuel. I think we've had a lovely evening, a lovely conversation around this. And I know consensus building is always a process. And I know this is not the first time we'll be having this kind of a system. Right. We have experimented. It may have not been the perfect system, but every given electoral system has its pros and its cons. So first, I think it's important for me to reiterate that neither under this constitution nor under the Constitution of Sierra Leone Amendment Act is an independent candidate precluded from contesting in the district block system. That is established. Given the fact that the fundamental regime to contest in a parliamentary election is provided for under Section 75 of the Constitution, that you have to be a citizen otherwise than by naturalization, you must be an elector, you must be 21 or over, and you must be able to read and speak the English language. Those are the 4 fundamental criteria. So no independent candidate, and we should not be surprised in the coming days, weeks, if by any given enabling regulation, all of those things are specified so that there is clarity on all of that.
Okay.
Secondly, I just want to say that we are talking about the PR system, and we've seen a situation where I love SLPP, and I have friends in the APC as well. These have been the 2 dominant players in the system, but I think Sierra Leoneans are now looking forward to a system where, given the entrenched nature of political party dispensation in Sierra Leone, where also some space could be other political parties could also leverage, given the space provided, so that we have several voices and interests factored in our political system. So PR system is never a perfect system, as much the same way as the first past the post is never a perfect system. And I think that given the fact that His Excellency the President has invoked the law, given the compelling circumstances, I think it now triggers the way forward, and I think we're all for a successful outcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Solomon Jamiru, Sierra Leone's Deputy Minister of Information and Communications, lawyer Lance Nadumbuya from the Opposition All People's Congress Party, Femi Claudius-Cole, 2018 presidential candidate for the Unity Party and acting chairperson for the coalition of, for the consortium of progressive political parties, and Reverend Jibril Akabu, Director of Communications, National Commission for Democracy. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the privilege of your time, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much for coming, but also to you who watched, listened, or followed us on social media. We are happy that you did. But in case you miss a part of this show, a repeat of it comes up on Thursday, 10 p.m. here on AYV, but a fresh edition comes up next week, same time, same station. Remember to always stay with AYV. We are your home of all things credible, factual, and all times balanced news. Until we meet again, the show has been AYV on Sunday. My name is Samuel Wise Bangura, wishing you a lovely night.